Much of what we know about the slaves themselves and their lives are from the stories passed down through generations, or from the slave owner's perspective, inventories, and census records. Very few slaves' written records exist, as most of them were not able to read or write. Just in recent decades have researchers begun using archaeology to study the lives of slaves. One of the biggest mysteries nagging archaeologists about slaves is nutrition. How in the world did slaves work those long days with the rations shown in plantation record books? The caloric intake reflected in those records wasn't sufficient to sustain them. Where did they get the additional calories? According to Joel L. Spigot, a curator and archaeologist, at one archaeological dig in Tennessee, they went to the slaves' old root cellars and found buried bones of animals. This was evidence that the slaves were going out at night and hunting, then eating the meat and buried in the southern states in the 1800s. In the beginning, slaves were brought to the United States for the purpose of providing labor for a specific period and were then to be freed. But with the growth of agriculture and the Industrial Revolution, the business of slavery grew and became crucial to the Southern economy. With cash crops such as cotton, rice, tobacco, and more, a very large workforce was needed. The African slaves were the ones chosen because they could work long hours and withstand new diseases. In the late 1700s to early 1800s, 400,000 people were brought into the United States to be sold as slaves. By 1860, the slave population had jumped to over 4 million, with Charleston possessing the largest slave population in the country. A captured African forced into enslavement began with a 6 to 10 week dehumanizing transatlantic journey to America, usually followed by being put up for sale on an auction block. A slave was considered valuable property and could be bought and sold at any time the owner chose. Used most abundantly in the South, slaves were forced to do jobs on plantations that no one else would do. Since a master owned the slaves, they were not paid. On plantations such as Boone Hall, there were two general ways the slave would work, either the gang or task system. Under the gang system, slaves were divided into 3 groups based upon their physical capabilities. These groups labored often from dawn to dusk under the supervision of an overseer. Because the fields were planted in successive rotation, once the gang had completed their work on one field, it was time to move to the next one. This underscored the severity of the system. Here in the Low Country, the task system was used most as either a replacement or a supplement to the gang system. So rather than slaves working in gangs with somebody pushing them, tasks, depending on the job to be done, were assigned to each slave, and the slave was free to leave when that work was done to the driver's satisfaction. As one plant 12 years old, in the winter months, the slaves would make bricks in the brickyard, and Boone Hall's brick and slave labor constructed many buildings in Charleston. It became very commonplace for slaves to be hired out from Boone Hall, as well as other plantations for construction projects and other services in town. Because of the amount of work that was being done in town by slaves, Charleston developed a slave tag system that was the